Hey, so I'm making a new video going over the 3.24 Necropolis changes. As I'm sure a lot of people are wondering what are my opinions on it, because there's some quite massive changes to the game for both endgame juicing and bow builds in general. So yeah, I made a quick TLDR and then I'll go over the other stuff like bows, MF, and all that. So TLDR is sextants are removed, scarabs are completely reworked. As you can see here, these scarabs now is like deli scarabs too. Essentially what they're trying to do is, with sextants being removed, they're going to add that sextant power back into scarabs and back into the atlas tree itself. So as you can see, there are some new scarabs. For example, Ultimatum has 5 different scarabs. There's only 3 different divination scarabs, and these also stack on top of each other, meaning you can use divination scarab of creation and a divination scarab of completion. You can use both in your atlas device now. And they're also completely reworked in how rare they are. They're now also global drops as well, so that's pretty massive. It should overall, I think, make them cheaper, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, massive atlas changes. There's no wander and path anymore, but what you'll find out later, no wander and path doesn't really matter, and it's actually a major buff. But yeah, you'll see later. We are no longer tied to Crimson Prison. This is another massive change. We can now farm any map in the game because of a new divination scarab. So the new divination scarab of creation, you get 10% more divination cards found in areas per different favorite map, and then divination card drops in areas are replaced by those of your favorite maps. So for example, you can favorite Burial Chambers, Crimson Temple, Defy Cathedral, etc. Right? There's a bunch of good maps, and then you can run any map in the game, like Jungle Valley, which has a really good layout. So yeah, I think with this change, Crimson Temple is most likely just dead. There's no real reason to run it because divination scarab is now a thing. Yeah, really great change. Going to be very interesting meta for MF. New lead mechanic is just, it's a crafting lead mechanic and it's in map. The in map lead mechanic can apply quant/rarity to mobs inside your map. Now this won't be as good as Affliction, as it only applies quant and rarity to certain mobs in your map, but it should be like pretty good. It's going to be better than Tota. It's going to be better than Crucible in terms of how how rewarding it is in the map. New tier 17 map with new uber bosses, and a new uber bosses in these tier 17 maps drop as newly buffed uniques. So yeah, pretty cool. And then tier 17 maps are modifiable, and they are really challenging. As you can see right here, some of these mods are pretty insane. So I don't think we're going to MF on these maps at all. These are mostly just for getting the new uniques, and it's also how you access new, old pinnacle bosses, because they separated the uber bosses and regular bosses, and then out of uber bosses, like something like Uber Shaper only drops in a tier 17 map. So yeah, the random lead mechanics and axe now is pretty cool for leveling. They made Headhunter and Mage Blood 2.5 times more common as a drop, not the diff cards, so don't get confused with that. So just getting a Headhunter and Mage Blood is 2.5 times more common, which is a buff to MF, as if you're not going to MF, you're not going to find this anyway. But if you are going to MF, you have really good chances to find multiple Headhunters and Mage Bloods now. They made stack decks more rare, and they also took away boss uniques from stack decks as well. And this is going to mean less apothecaries and doctor cards, which is good for us, because if you're farming doctors or apothecaries and that's left them in the market, that means they're going to be worth more. So yeah, good change for stack decks. There's no 8 mod sextant, which will make it hard to get 8 mods, but there might be a replacement. Tornado Shot was heavily nerfed. LA is fine, and no Deadeye nerfs means bows are still OP. So this is obviously a big one. As you can see here, this is a Tornado Shot change. So it now has an attack speed multiplier of 80% instead of 100%. That's a straight 20% damage nerf. The mana cost is now 12 instead of 8. Not too a big deal, but the major one here is it now has 40% increased projectile speed instead of +1 secondary projectiles. So yeah, in my opinion, TS is pretty much just dead. I don't think there's a reason to play TS anymore. I'll just play LA instead, and maybe Kinetic Blast, Wanderers if they're pretty good this league. So yeah, really big nerfs to TS. TS is a very strong skill, but this is a 40% damage nerf. So yeah, because a 20% here and a 25% here, so it's a total of 40% DPS nerf, and most importantly, it's a clear speed nerf. This is why I think TS is dead. If this was a straight up like 40% less damage, I would say TS is still completely fine and still really good. But because this is a clear speed nerf, I can't see a reason to play this over Lightning Arrow, which is just going to have better clear speed now, because the 20% less attack speed means obviously it's going to be clear slower. And then of course the one secondary additional projectile is now gone. That's a massive clear speed nerf, and now there's actually no way in the game to fire more secondary additional projectiles with Tornado Shot. You're capped out at 3 secondary additional projectiles. So yeah, it's just both a damage nerf and a heavy clear speed nerf. So unfortunately, I don't think Tornado Shot's worth playing anymore. LA will just have better clear speed. Kinetic Blast should also have better clear speed. There is one thing to note though, is that Tornado Shot will still be the best bow skill for single target damage, but I don't think we really need single target damage in the next league after coming from Affliction. I highly doubt next league is just as hard as Affliction. So yep. Soldier was nerfed. It's capped at 45 stacks now. This is a pretty big nerf to Headhunter, but it's not big enough to where Headhunter is dead or anything. Headhunter is still extremely strong, as it's the only belt that gives this source power in the first place. Mage Blood's more so for utility for MF rather than power. So yeah, still very good. Nerf to Headhunter, but still very strong. I would say mostly now, if you're playing a fizz-based spell or attack, you want to play Headhunter. If you're playing an Ellie bow now, you probably want to go to Mage Blood with the Soul Eater nerf. That's my general thoughts right now. Obviously it's not both next league, but yeah. Most likely Fizz bow, Headhunter, and if you are Ellie bow, then stick to Mage Blood. Sniper's Mark got nerfed, but it's not a big deal for bows. It's mostly for builds who abused it. So Sniper's Mark, it went from 29% increased damage taken from 35%. So I mean 6% damage lost, not a big deal at all, right? The big nerf is the split from Sniper's Mark is now only 2 instead of 4. Once again, this is a nerf, but it's not a big nerf for us. We weren't abusing it. This is mostly a nerf for builds, I believe, like Split and Steel, that was abused in Split in plus return projectiles to get massive damage. So because we weren't really doing that with our bow skills, it's not a big nerf for us. It is a nerf, and it does make the Warlord's Mark set up a little bit better with the near permanent Berserk. So maybe I'll now start playing with that in the future. But yeah, still very strong though, very strong. Flasks no longer have 25% reduced mana cost, and jewels can no longer roll reduced mana cost. So they just completely removed the flask mana cost and the jewels. I guess GG doesn't want us to have easy access to reduced mana cost. This is obviously going to be a huge problem for a lot of builds. Particular spell builds usually relied on this a lot. For my build, this obviously does nothing because I didn't use either of these anyway. But I thought I would mention this because this is a pretty big nerf, and probably the biggest nerf in the patch notes for just general use. Wands potentially got a massive buff. So if you don't know what happened to Wands, there's a new support gem. Sacred Wisp. Essentially what the support gem is going to try to do is buff the single target of wand skills. Depending on how good this is, this could actually make wands meta and actually scale better than bows for once. So yeah, I'm very excited for the new support gems. I do like playing wands, and I hope this is good because Kinetic Blast is just fun to play. Yep. So hopefully it's good. We'll see. We don't have the numbers on it yet though. Scorch Arrow Menace got nerfed from 5 projectiles to 4. Just play LA instead. So yeah, Scorch Arrow Menace was a skill people were toying with last league. The problem with Scorch Arrow Menace, it didn't really have the damage. And now with this 1 projectile nerf, I can't really see why you would play this over LA anyway. The Elemental Flash change, only nerf for very high-end builds, pretty much a buff before 9% max res. So if you're unsure what happened here, Elemental Flask. Bad. Where is it? Yeah. So Ruby, Sapphire, and Topaz Flask no longer grant 20% less damage taken. Instead, they now grant 5% to maximum resist of their respective element. So a lot of people are confused. Is this a nerf? Is this a buff? I would just say for 99% of people, this is a straight up buff. This is only a nerf if you were a build that essentially had 90% max res and you're using triple LE Flask. That's the only time where this is really a nerf. Before that point, it's a buff, and it also allows for new cool build options. It allows for probably budget nebulous Pathfinder builds, Meld in the Flesh builds, etc. I think it's a really good change. It's only enough for the top 1%, and probably higher than that. It's a buff like everyone else, and it's going to make for some new, cool, interesting builds. DD now has a delay before going off. You're less likely to die randomly in maps. This is very, very nice. Usually in high-end juice maps, you have like thousands of mobs in your map, and it's just kind of random sometimes when you die because you just get DD'd off screen. There's nothing you can really do about it. But now with this DD delay, you're going to die less in maps. And yeah, just really, really nice. And by DD, I mean Detonate Dead, of course. It's just the most dangerous skill to face in maps. You can use different tiers of the same Scarab and Atlas device. I talked about this earlier. You can now use multiple different Scarabs in the Atlas device. You use multiple divination Scarabs. Can't use the same one twice, but you can use 2 different ones. Conversion loot is nerfed, but doesn't really matter as they were weak without affliction whips anyway. So if you're new to MF, if you only MF'd in affliction, then you might think conversion loot nerf is massive, but no, it's not. Without affliction, conversion loot was essentially meaningless anyway. It really didn't add like any currency to your profit an hour. So yeah, this nerf doesn't matter at all because affliction is going away. It is a slight nerf to MF, but it really doesn't matter all that much. I think the only thing this really does, and it makes Reliquary Scarab less valuable, so maybe we won't use Reliquary Scarab as much anymore. We'll see though. Tattoos are back, so yeah, they're bringing back tattoos, but only the basic ones. So we aren't getting like plus projectile tattoos, for example. And the last TLDR is you can now have 3 Atlas trees. And you can swap between these Atlas trees for free, and there's no cost to swap between them. So very, very nice. This is going to help massively for Atlas progression, as you can now have a fully, your first tree be fully dedicated to your Atlas progression tree, and then swap to your main farming tree. So yeah, TLDR, bows are still OP because Deadeye/LA are untouched. They did not touch Deadeye at all or Light and Arrow. They're completely unnerved. MF should still be good. Only know so far no Sextons, but a new Atlas tree/Scarabs could be really, really strong. It could be better or worse. We don't really know until we see all the new Scarabs. So these are the only Scarabs we have right now. They will release the full Scarab information before the patch goes live. So yeah, I would say I think it's gonna be buffed, and I'll tell you why later. But yeah, it is looking pretty promising. So yeah, early thoughts and plans for 324. So Legion is still king. 5 ways did get nerfed in EXP, but emblems are still gonna be worth money because everyone needs timeless jewels to start a league. And Legion is also better early on now as well, as you're gonna have more Legion spawn chance. So yeah, I still think Legion's like the best early map and strategy you can do in the game. And there's also some really cool things you can do with Legion now because you have so many extra points. Of course, of all my Atlas trees, all my build planners, whatever, before league start, for both MF and no MF, for stuff like Legion. So yeah. LA Deadeye is most likely my league start, and I might transition into KB Wanderer if the new support gem is OP. So yeah. No changes here pretty much. Not playing Tornado Shot unless for some reason we really need that boss damage, that single target damage, as LA will have pretty clear speed. I'll most likely still play MF unless the changes somehow make it really, really bad. I'm not going to force myself. Like if MF is just bad, I'm just not going to play it, but I don't expect that. And as you see, I think MF's got some really major buffs. So yeah. New Go Div Scared is from quick math. It's 120% more div cards, but you need 12 different favorite maps. There's some interesting things here to theorycraft. And also, we don't know exactly how this works. There's 2 ways the different Scarab could work. It could either be, let's say you favorite Defiled Cathedral and Crimson Temple. Does that give you like double apothecary chance, or is that just like 1 apothecary chance, you know? We don't know exactly how it works. We'll have to wait until patch goes live, of course. Yeah, the upside is you get to farm the best maps in the game now, not Crimson Temple. So the old guild div was 150% more div cards. This one's only 120% more, but it's a massive upside if you want to farm the best maps in the game and not Crimson Temple. Because if you MF before, you know Crimson Temple, which is a terrible map. You can't do like any league mechanics in that map besides boxes and Harbinger and like Delhi, and yeah, like you couldn't do Legion. Now you can do stuff like Jungle Valley and still do Legion. So yeah, I like this change a lot. Stuff like Legion would be a lot better for MF now because they're not tied to Crimson Temple. Atlas changes also allow Harbinger to be used quite effectively for MF. So yeah, with Wandering Path gone, Harbinger now gets access to First Wave, which is King Harby, and Unspeakable Offensive, which makes Harbies fast. I've always been a really big Harby fan with MF. problem is when you take Wander and Path, you lose the best 2 Harvey nodes, and now you get access to them. So potentially Harvey could be really nice for MF, and I'll definitely try it out next league. So early thoughts are, you probably want to do something like Legion beyond Harvey Div Scarabs, or Strongbox Scarabs, depending if the Strongbox Scarabs are good, we don't know. We really just see the full Scarab list to have a full defined answer. And once we do have that full list, I'll be making multiple Atlas trees. Like I said earlier, Reliquary Scarabs are worse with the nerf to loot, but it might still be worth it. Here I just listed a few maps that you could use with this new Divination Scarab, as you need different favorite maps. So yeah. Just the standard like Crimson Temple, Defy Cathedral, Cemetery, etc. Also some interesting maps for the new Divination Scarab of Completion. So this one, where you have a 20% chance to drop it as a full stack instead. So Burial Chambers is potentially very strong with this, because it's 220% more fortunates with this Divination card. Burial Chambers is potentially very strong for this, because with this new Divination Scarab, it's 220% more fortunates and 140% more doctors. So it's slightly worse on doctors compared to old Divination Scarab, but it's better for fortunates. So yeah, this is something to keep in mind. Maybe this could be a strat. I just wanted to mention it real quick. Alright, and now here are the big changes. Now why I think MF might have actually been buffed. So potentially the new best MF strat might be Val Temple with Twist of Fate plus Divination Scarab of Curation. So if you're unsure what all this is, so Twist of Fate was changed. Essentially, it now gives 1 to 3 additional random map modifiers, so on average 2. And your corrupted ram maps and any crafting options are randomized, but your scarabs are not randomized. So before, like I say here, Twist of Fate would also randomize your scarabs. This is no longer true. That makes it very strong. On average, it gets 2 additional mods. If you're not sure, 1 mod on average is about 5% pack size and 15% quant, which is then multiplied through your increases effect of modifiers on your Atlas tree. So yeah, 2 mods, you're getting 30% quant and 10% pack size, which is then multiplied through your increases. The Val Temple map, if you're unsure what it does, it essentially gives you 10 strong boxes at baseline, which is then multiplied through your increased effect, which is going to be 18 and 19 with the new Atlas. So yeah, very strong. If there's enraged strong boxes through the new scarabs, because there are 5 ambush scarabs, then potentially this is just going to be the best strat. I think there is a good chance, we don't really know, but there are 5 ambush scarabs, and that's 5 ambush scarabs. There's I'd say a decent chance that one of them make strong boxes extremely strong for MF. You most likely will want generic limit mechanics for this strategy, because it needs to work in any layout. Your map's going to be completely random of what you get. So you probably want like strong boxes, Harvey, Beyond, Delhi, stuff like that. Legion is like okay, but you probably want to avoid it. And the new Divination Scarab allows you to farm any map and still drop Apothecary and Doctors. So yeah, like I was saying earlier, because of the new Divination Scarab, this allows this strat to actually be good, because now it doesn't matter what map you farm. You can get 100% for pretty much any limit mechanic to spawn in the new Atlas tree, and therefore you won't have to use a scare for it as well. So what do I mean by this? So pretty much any limit mechanic now has a 100% spawn chance if you spec all the way into it. So for example, Delhi, if you get these 4 points, they're 12% each, 24% notable. Then you can get these 4 points right here, 8%, 8%, and you get these 3. You end up with a 100% delirium spawn chance. This is true for like every lead mechanic. You can get a 100% natural beyond spawn chance as well if you take all the beyond nodes. You get a 100% legion spawn chance. So yeah, they buffed the Atlas tree really massively. These maps are going to be extremely challenging, but potentially the best strat. Random mods and 90% increased modifiers. So yeah, let's go over this. 90% increased modifiers. So if you're aware from last league, we've only had 60% increased map modifiers from taking all these map nodes and wandering path. In the new patch, they added up to 90% increased modifiers with more notables. So now we have like this wheel, Chisel Perfection. We also have this wheel as well, Mounted Modifiers, where we're just gonna get more increased effect to our maps. In total, if you have a 20% quality map with 8 mods, this is a 90% increase. On the lower end, it's like a 78% increase, which is still better than the old Atlas. So for those that know, 90% increase modifiers is absolutely insane, and this is why MF might have actually gotten buffed. Increasing that much map quant is insane, because how MF works is that map quant is multiplicative with player quant, which is multiplicative with monster quant. And because the league mechanic also introduces more monster quant, and we're going to get more map quant this league, it should be really, really juicy for high-end MF. But these maps are going to be very, very hard, especially if you do Twist of Fate, because your map mods are completely random. So keep that in mind. It might be a very challenging league. I don't think as challenging as Affliction, but yeah, it should be very, very lucrative. So yeah, that's it. That's about all I have to say for the 3.24 and generally the TLDR. My general thoughts in the end here is that, yeah, Bows is still OP, Chainmail Shot's probably just dead, but LA is still extremely strong. I'll show you that LA can clear all endgame very easily in these high-end juice maps. Without Wisps, monsters are like 10 times weaker. As for MF, I think MF potentially got buffed. I can't say for sure, we need to see all the new scarabs, but it's looking very promising because now you can just have 9% increase modifiers in your maps, which is insane, and everything in the Atlas is like essentially buffed. Having 100% natural daily spawn chance is insane. 100% natural beyond chance is also really insane. So yeah, those are my general thoughts. If you have any comments, leave it below. Of course, I'll be streaming like all day on Twitch, probably like for like the next month or whatever, as we're gonna be theory crafting into next week, and then of course league blasting. And of course, I'll have all my strats and stuff before league start. So yeah, that's about it.